Alright guys, so excuse my audio and my recording. So I'm still in an Airbnb recording from my laptop, so it is what it is. Last night, Maxime Begwin from Advanced SEMA released AT 3.1, which includes a CSS framework for Bricks and AT that he and I have been working on together. So I just want to talk about what it is and what it isn't. So firstly, I just want to be very, very clear that this is a simple framework that works with Bricks and Advanced SEMA, and it is standard Bricks settings mostly. So it's mostly variables, so CSS variables, a few utility classes, and some of those variables in a theme, and then using AT's color management, all in Bricks, just to make it more familiar and easier to use. It is not to be compared with large frameworks like Core or HCSS. They are much more comprehensive and they work outside of Bricks. You don't require AT for them, so it's not the same thing. It is just a framework in a sense that I've been using myself ever since Bricks introduced the CSS variables, the global variables. And I spoke with Maxime a couple of weeks ago and said, how can we standardize this so that we can create some libraries or have people create libraries and be confident that those CSS variables and classes exist in Bricks, and they will never be switched off because we're making a very lean framework, so you don't have to enable or disable classes and variables and whatnot. So I want to be able to know that if I create a library or create a template for myself, I'm not interested in selling libraries or like selling templates. This is for my own work. If I create templates, when I insert those templates, I know that that CSS exists to support that template. So that was the key behind it, and this is where we've got to. Now, Paul Charlton did a great video on the beta, which was just a couple of days ago. This has moved at a cracking pace. So the other thing is that it's not going to be a framework that continually gets added to or changed. So if there's anything that's not working properly, we will fix it. If there's any great ideas that we think should be included, we will add them. But you're not going to get updates every week or every month because I don't think you need to. We're just keeping this as simple as possible. All right, so what is it? So I'm starting with a blank canvas here. So I've got no CSS variables, no theme, no global classes, nothing. So what we do is we go into AT, and again, Paul Charlton's already covered this. Go to AT, we go to our AT framework, and I'm just going to enable everything, and I encourage you to enable everything because this is all your CSS variables that make up the framework. And look, there's so few of them, they have no performance impact, and you want to make sure that they're there so that if you use a template from a library, whether it's your library or someone else's who's supporting ATF, you want to make sure that they're there. Okay, we don't want to be turning stuff off and then go, oh, my template's broken because you didn't enable the buttons or you didn't enable the gaps or whatever it was. So I'd say that. Global colors, you can just enable one of these. I'm going to enable all of them. We just put these as test colors, and I'll show you what that's all about. So I'm just going to enable all of that. We're going to enable all of our global classes, and you can see by the numbers, there's not many. Color sets has the most, there's 40, because it's all the different variations of colors, which I'll talk about separately. Now, these are the ones that are going to require some explanation. The typical utilities, the variables, they all just make sense. These here, like our unordered list utilities, our color set utilities, our mark utilities, they're not obvious immediately, so I'm going to create some separate videos to explain how to use those and the benefit of this. I'll really do a quick run through in this to show you the use of it, but we'll create separate videos to go through that. So the toggle that on, and we're going to need a framework. So the framework will be, if we look into the theme styles here, we don't have any themes. So we're going to need the AT framework theme style. So if we turn that on, we now have AT framework, and you see all these yellow dots here? Those yellow dots mean that we've populated these with some of these variables. So that will be things like your typography sizes, your gaps between components, your default things that you have in your theme are in there, and we'll go through that separately as well. So these all reference these variables that we've just enabled up at the top here. We then have some global CSS. There's some stuff that needs to be in global CSS. So 99% of this is based on you using the Bricks system. So you use the Bricks global class system, you create classes, apply your variables to your CSS, whether it's the UI or your own CSS, you apply them to there, and Bricks only outputs what is used. So if you put a class on an element, it gets output. If you don't put a class on an element, it does not get output onto the DOM. There are some things that we need output always, things like buttons, because we're automatically mapping buttons to Bricks. You may not add a class to an element for that, so we need that to output anyway. So there's a few little things in there. It's a very lean file. There's not much in there. And then we've got some AT recipes. Now, most of these recipes are to take advantage of these utility classes up here. So for color sets, line clamps, marks, an ordered list, etc. But then there's some useful things in there for breakpoints and container queries and things like that. So just turn it on and that will give you everything. So I would say go through here, toggle all, AT framework, global CSS and AT recipes, and get them all in there. Okay, I'm going to save that. And as always with Bricks, whenever I make major changes like that, I'm going to hit the save and refresh. I haven't found that I needed to with this, but yeah, quite often you go to do things in Bricks and it doesn't work properly unless you save and refresh. All right, now let's have a look at what we got. So let's have a look at our colors. So we've got AT green, red, nature, purple, and AT framework. This is our color sets. Okay, we'll go through those, and you look at these, they're all named the same. So we've got primary, secondary, neutral, black, and white. With our primary, secondary, and neutral, we have 6 dark, 6 light, and 6 transparencies for each one of those. And you can add to those just by going into the generate shades and tell it to generate more or less of what you want. Okay, that's pretty simple. So primary, secondary, and neutral have all those. Black and white just have transparencies because we don't have shades of black and shades of white. Okay, and that's the same for each set. So I'll show you the benefit of this, and later on down the track, Maxime's going to add some features, I believe, to absolutely blow this away, where you can conditionally load color sets. So you might have a completely different set of colors based on a taxonomy, or whether the user's logged in or not, or or the particular page, or whatever it was. You might want a different color set for that page. That is what you'll be able to do in the future when that comes out. So that's why I'm loading more than just the one color set, and I'm going to show you how that works. All right, so we have a bunch of variables, and they're all organized into their categories. One thing I will say in here is we're using framework variables. So when we create our colors, AT creates colors here, so variables. So let's have a look at that there, for example. So we've got a color called primary. If we go into our variables and we have a look at our buttons, we've got AT primary L3, which is light 3, L6 light 6. AT primary is our primary color. And next to these, you can see the little color picker now in AT. Do not use these for the framework. These will break because these here are your generated variables from the AT color manager. If you click on these, you get a color picker, which is not referencing those colors. If you click away from that, it's actually fixed it. Since I said this, if you click away, it was actually replacing that. But you don't want to set these to fixed values. You want to set these to the variables so that you can use the color manager to change these without having to go back through these. My honest feeling on this is if you wanted to change, for example, on the primary button on Hobby, if you want to make that a light 4, I would just change that there. I would just change the actual variable, not use this color picker. And you see there's a type ahead or will pick up your actual values there as well. So that's your buttons. We've got typical things like your site widths, all that sort of stuff, grids, bunch of grids, but auto grid sizing there, spacing. Okay. Now we're in here, I'm going to make a comment about something that came up in the Facebook group. There's people wanting to not use the AT prefix. Okay, so the thing is, I would say, do not change the name of any variables or any classes that start with AT. The reason we started them with AT is so you could easily determine which variables and classes are part of AT framework and which are not. Okay, the idea of that is that when you're using them, you know that if I've got a AT space --s, then that's an AT framework variable. If you change those prefixes, it no longer refers to AT framework. So it's up to you to keep track of where those classes and variables are defined. The other thing is that we use these in other places. So for example, I've got here spacing. I've got from space dash s, going to XS, 2XS, 3XS, and going to medium, large, XL, 2XL. And then in my gaps, I reference the space L, space S, space XS. So if you come back into your spacing and you change that, you're going to go everywhere that is used and you've got to update it. Also, if you have a look over in the theme, in the settings on the theme here, you will see they're used through here as well. So if we go to a section, for example, we've got, let's make it a bit wider, we've got our max width of our section being our AT section max width. We've got our container gap being AT container gap. So you come in here and you rename these prefixes just because you like a different prefix, you will break the framework. So do not rename these. I don't see any point in doing it. Just because you prefer to put your prefix on there, it has no value. It's just really just changing a prefix for the sake of it, and it does not add any value, but it will potentially break your framework. So I would say don't change any of those. Right? That is where your settings are, and that was what AT brings to the table. Now using it. So I've created a small test library, and I'm going to show you very, very quickly what you can do with this. So if I go into my templates, I'm going to grab a hero, and I'm going to insert that hero. Okay, I'm going to come down into my decoration. I've got an SVG, so I've got to sign that because I've got SVG code. That just puts this is not a pretty hero, it's just something I was playing around with to see how we can demonstrate the use of all this. So this up here, if we look at that whole thing there, that is what we'd call in atomic design a molecule. So that there is an intro which will be used in many places, not just in this hero. Okay, so that's that. Now let's grab some other content. Let's grab maybe this guy that's running. We'll stick him in there. It's going to warn us that we're going to have some conflicts because we've already bought a template in that has these variables. I'd just say skip the class import because they're already there and we know that's part of the framework. So there's that. Okay, we're then going to maybe add another bit of content. Maybe I'll just add one of these headings in there. In fact, I think that's not, it's just a block. So we're going to add a section and we're going to just drag that inside that section. Oh. I think I haven't updated this to the latest. I haven't updated this to the latest AT. So I've just got a bit of lag here. So just bear with me on that. Okay, so now we've just put our intro into that section. Okay, so we've got a few things here. Now let's say we want to create one from scratch. We go down to our section here, got a container, create a block, and we're going to call that a grid. I'm just going to style this one at the ID level. We're going to create another one, and we're going to call this a test card. Actually, I won't. I'll get one from my framework. So I'm going to create a grid. I'm going to grab a card. I know all the thumbnails are messed up at the moment. I'm going to drag that into the grid. Okay, so on my grid, I'm going to use my variables. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make it a grid. Now I'm just going to type in a fill. Type fill. So the type ahead here, so it doesn't matter how long that name is, you just start typing a useful part of that name, and then click on it. Right? Or you can click on the V and go searching through those. But I prefer just using the type ahead here because we know what we want, right? So now we have a card, a dummy card that we put in there. I'm going to duplicate that out a few times. I'm going to duplicate, say, 4 times, so there's more cards that will fit there. And let's have a look at what we have. So if I have a look on the front end, we have a hero, we've got a bit of content with a intro, a different type of intro, we've got some cards. It's okay, so let's have a look at how we can use our color utilities. We're going to grab that section. And this is a utility I'll create a separate video for, and we're going to use a color set. Okay, that does nothing just yet. We only add that, and this is part of the point where this color set utility, if we have a look at the CSS for it, it is applying a bunch of variables based on settings that we set. So this doesn't actually have the settings. This is the application of those settings, if you like. So then we need to create a version or modifier. So we're going to do color set. Well, let's pick a neutral D3. Go through all these. Let's say we want to pick a dark primary. So I'm going to go say primary D4. Okay, we've got primary D4. We can see our cards by default have a neutral color set on them. So let's go to the first card. And we're going to say that's already got a color set. Get rid of that neutral L5. And we're going to change that to color set. And by the way, the performance I'm having here has been fixed up in the latest version of AT. I just forgot to update my latest, my demo. So let's say we're going to use a secondary. There we go. Let's say use that color there. All right, so we've just changed the color set. And see how the heading color, the body color, the text link has changed, the background. And by the way, these are named by the background color. So color set, secondary D4 is the background, and then we set some values for other things on top of that. Now, the other thing we've got in here, again, I'll go through this in greater detail, is that if we call elements, a wrapper, so header wrapper, body wrapper, footer wrapper, media wrapper, those four there, then they will automatically get styled. And let's have a look at where it gets that from. I'm probably spending a bit more time on the card than I should. If we have a look at our CSS there, just unlock that so we can look at it. And we'll just see it's just a bunch of variables. Our color set, secondary, we want our text color, our background, we want a heading color, and then our link, and then we've got our header wrapper background. So the header wrapper background, I've just done all these. If it is a dark version, I'm just setting it to a transparent white. So that's why it's got that transparent white there. If it is a light version, we set it to a transparent black to sit on top of it. And that's all I've done with these. But you can edit these. Once you've imported this framework, you go into the standard bricks classes. So if you want to edit if you want to use this secondary D4, but you go, actually on the secondary D4, we want the background, header background, but we want that to be a, well, let's make it a black T3, T4, T5. There, black T5. No, we want that to be black T3. Okay, so our header is now on that secondary D4. It's now got a black transparency behind it. So then you've saved that. Then whenever you apply that, so if I go to another class here, so this other card here, and I'll get rid of that color set there, and I'll make that my, I'll just start typing secondary. Again, this performance is fixed. I just forgot to do my latest update before. So my D3's got the white background, D4's got the dark background because I edited that class. Okay, that is really, really simple. And then the other thing I'm going to do is I'll show you on the main background here is we're going to create our own color set. All right, so let's create so I'm on the background of this, what we've got here, the primary D4. On there, I'm going to create my own. So I'm going to create a color set. I'll call this AB color set. And I'll make this my CTA color set. Okay, on my CTA color set, I'll then go into my CSS for that. And this is where we use the recipe. So I'm going to use a color set, recipe, and there's all my values. Right, let's change the values there. Let's say we don't want to set the let's go to the background color. Where's our background? Here's our background. So I'm going to make that a linear gradient. So my microphone is right next to my hand, and I have to try to keep it out of the way. The beauties of working from a laptop. Okay, we're going to go 30 degrees, red, black. Okay, just so we can see it working. So we go 30 degree, red to black. Move that across a little bit. Okay, so that's not what we want. We want to do a primary. And pick let's say primary D5. Just got to get my little zoom thing out of the way here, or loom I should say. So we got primary D5 through to primary. Maybe we just do primary. There we go. So we've got a primary D5 through to primary gradient on that color set. Let's have a look at it on the front end. All right, so here we go. We've got a primary D5, so we've got a gradient background by creating our own color set using a recipe. Now you could also, I'll show you another little trick here. Let's get rid of all of the other stuff. So we'll get rid of all of this except for our background. And we're going to add our standard background of a color set. Primary D4, and we're going to make sure we put that CTA after that. So we have the background, but all of the other stuff, like put a heading in there and some copy in there. Sorry, this is the performance stuff that Maxime worked really, really hard on. And I forgot, and I haven't updated this. Okay, I'm just going to leave it at that. So you can see that our heading color is white. Our copy down the bottom here is black, as white, and that's because the color set we selected up here, which is the primary D4, sets our heading and text colors, and then we've added another modifier for our CTA, which basically sets the background color. All right, now, so that's cool enough. Now the color management. This is what I really, really like. This is one I really, really like with this AT. So in our color management, let's say we go, for example, into our colors and we're on our AT framework. First of all, let's just change the primary, maybe want that more towards blue. So there's our blue there. Typically to set the neutral, I'm again grabbing the hex value for my primary. I go to the neutral, I paste that in, okay, and see how neutral's gone all blue there. I then go to the HSL, make sure that's on 50 for the L, and I set the, depending on the color, I'll set the saturation. So instead of being gray, that's a dark gray, so it's hard to see. So if I set that to 0, you can see that's a gray. Right? If I set this to say 12, you can see it's got a little tinge of the primary in it. So it just keeps it nice and branded. So I like that. So the other thing we can do here is, let's say we want a completely different color. We can turn off our AT framework color and turn on our purple. All these styles have changed. So the buttons, the backgrounds, the colors that we set here, because we're referencing variables, everything changes. And that is one of the things that I really, really like about this. The other thing is the buttons. So if we look at these buttons here, these are all linked through to Brick's standard buttons. So I'm just going to get my little loom thing out of the way. You can't see it, but it's right in the way for me. So it's linked to these. So primary, secondary, light, and dark. We've also linked the outline switch as well. So it doesn't matter which one of these. So if we go secondary, it's the secondary outline. Primary, it's the primary outline. Light. So these are all linked through. And where you change these is in your single point of truth, which is your variable. So we go to our button. That's our defaults for our button. And we go to our primary. We decide actually on our outline version of our primary, we want a little bit of background. Let's say that, for example. So we look at our outline background. We've got that set to being basically transparent. So if I want that to be primary, T, let's make it T5. Okay, and then that's the background. And on hover, make it T3. Save that. Okay, we've got a primary outline button here, and it's got a slight, actually that's not the primary, that is the light. Let's go primary. See, now our primary outline's got a slight primary, and we hover it's a little bit more, but our color's off now. So we want to set the color for that. So let's go to our primary color. AT. Primary color. we're on the outline. So primary color, outline color, we've got as primary. Make that L6. Primary L6. Okay, now our outline button has a primary L6 for our color. It's got a little bit of primary in the background with a transparency, and that is linked to all the buttons. So on this one here, if I change that to be an outline, it's got exactly the same styles as that one up there. So this set of variables is your single point of truth for managing your sizing, your spacing, your gaps, your button colors. We've got some mark stuff in there, some borders in there, box shadow, filters and transitions for duration and distance. There's quite a bit in there. So too much to go through, but this is an overview of where everything is, how it works, how the color set at least works. We'll go through in greater detail with that in another video, and where it all sits. So anyway, that is it for this video. I'll go into more detail when I look at specific elements of this framework. I hope you enjoy this. I hope it makes working with bricks easier for you, and I'll leave it here.